When you think of some of the most difficult games from the 16-bit era, what games do you think of? Castlevania? Maybe Super Ghouls and Ghosts? How about Lion King? Literally, Google hardest SNES games, and every single one mentions The Lion King. The Lion King, a movie that, although anyone can enjoy, its primary audience is young children. Why in the world would they make a video game like this so darn difficult? And in case you think, oh, it's probably not that bad, play it. Because if you were like me and you played this game as a kid, you got to stage 2, maybe stage 4, and that was it. You didn't get any further. So in today's video, that's what we're going to do. We're going to play one of the most difficult games I've ever beaten, talk about how I was able to beat it, and by watching this video, if you choose to go back to Lion King, there's a solid chance that with enough time, you too can beat this game. I mean it. I'm not great at video games and I did it, so I promise you can too. With that said, I give you 16-bit era's The Lion King. So let's start off with the very first stage, the Pride Lands. This stage is really easy. I was able to beat it at like 6 years old. There's no pits, there's some enemies you can jump on, and probably this is a good time to talk about how does Simba move? Well, if you press the D-pad, he runs. There's no run button. He can jump both over pits, which, like I said, not in this level, and on enemies. Typically, enemies only require one hit, but some require more. He can roar. Pretty useless, but in this level, you can flip over porcupines and explode beetles. Of course, you can just jump on the beetles and then just time delays their explosion, but you know, you can roar. And in terms of your basic movement options, that's it. That's all there really is. I mean, there's a little bit more as the game goes on, especially in the second half, but primarily, this is what you're going to be doing. And in case you're thinking, that's not so bad, I was expecting something a lot more gimmicky or ridiculous. Nope, the difficulty in this game is derived through other means, but we aren't there yet. Actually, maybe we are, because let's turn our attention to the top of the screen. What do these bars mean? If you guessed one of them is your HP bar, great. Which one? Now, in most video games, your HP is on the top left, so you might mistakenly assume this game does that too. It doesn't. That's your roar meter. When you get hit, it depletes to 0, and when you roar, it depletes to 0. When it's at sufficient roar level, that's when you can explode beetles and flip over porcupines. How much roar do you need? I actually, to this day, don't exactly know, but it doesn't matter. The roar is pretty useless. Your health meter is on the right, and a minor gripe I have with this game, but one that will make you a little annoyed, at least if you're anything like me, there's no number to the health bar or even segments like in Ninja Gaiden or Castlevania. I hate this. I can't tell at a glance how much health I have or how much damage an enemy is doing, and that's a little annoying and just makes things a little more obfuscated than they need to be. And this obfuscation, or in more normal people words, the game really not describing to you how to play it. Sure, there's a manual, but good games like Mario teach you how to play by showing you in the game, even if you don't have the manual. Lion King doesn't do that. There's quite a few sections in this game that are completely unintuitive. Speaking of which, let's talk about the most important thing in this stage, power-ups. Yeah, there are power-ups. There's health power-ups in the form of these beetles, but those aren't super important. I mean, they are, but yeah, they exist. What's important is that there are ways to increase your max health. It's right here, so easy to see. Oh wait, no it's not. I can't see it at all now. Oh wait, there it is. Wait, it's gone now. What's going on? Okay, well, some of you probably figured out what's going on, but if you didn't, this game was released on multiple platforms. In fact, it was released on a lot of platforms. We're talking about the 16-bit Lion King, which is the original game, the ones that all the others are based on. I want to cover all the rest of them in another video, but for today, let's stick with the one you guys all remember. There are 4 main versions of this game: the Genesis, SNES, PC, and Amiga version. For the most part, other than the Amiga version dropping levels, these are all virtually identical, but there are some differences. One of the most important being, for whatever reason, the Genesis version is zoomed out. I don't know why they did this, but I'm glad they did. It makes seeing this power-up easier, and it will make some other levels a little bit easier. Not substantially, but definitely a little bit. This orange beetle is one of the most important ones you can collect, and I don't even know where they are in other levels, but they give you more health, and that can really be a lifesaver. Literally. There's also a roar power-up, and this blue beetle gives you a bonus game. Those are super important and are easy to find, relatively so. That would be all I'd have to say about the first stage, if it weren't for this area over to the right. It's a little hidden, but you can see there is a break in the rock face. You can jump over it, and look at that, a 1-up. It's even clearly labeled. Cool, which is what Simba says when you collect it. Nothing to complain about here, but hey look, if you roll into this completely solid wall, of which there is no indication you can do so, you get to a secret area, and there's a sun. The sun represents continues. How do these work? I'm going to talk about it when we get to stage 2, because that's where they'll come into play. But for now, let's finish up stage 1. All you need to do is get to the top, jump over, and there's a hyena. The hyena is invulnerable until it is panting. You just have to avoid its attacks. You have to get close so it actually does attack you, but then not too close where you get attacked. Sometimes it jumps, and when it starts panting, you jump on it. On the standard difficulty, you just have to jump on it twice, and that's it. Easy. I did this at 6 years old. Let's move on to I Just Can't Wait to Be King. Probably one of the most difficult second levels in video game history. There is so much to say about this level. Oh my god. So let's take you through step by step because there's a lot of mechanics unique to this level. These rhinoceroses, if you jump near their horn, they hit you up. The blue monkeys throw you in a predetermined fashion like the barrels in Donkey Kong. You have no control. Now we get to these giraffes. You'll notice that after I jump on them, they tilt their necks. What you should know is if I stand too long, which I'll do to show you, they do that while you're on there and you fall and lose a life. So that's great. Now you've got to figure out what to do in this section. It's not difficult, there's no bits, but you need to know that you have to stand on the right bird's nest, and then you have to do a bit of a quote-unquote puzzle. This was something I struggled with as a kid, but as an adult it's not too bad. The pink monkeys can change the way they throw you by roaring, and so by roaring them in the correct order, you then can proceed to everyone's favorite part of the level, the ostrich. And this is one of the few examples of which where the Genesis version is significantly easier. Now, this first ostrich section isn't so bad because the game tells you whether you need to jump, duck, or double jump. One thing that definitely messed a lot of people up as kids, including myself, is the timing of the double jump. I'm not even exactly sure watching the footage back what exactly it is that you're hitting, but what I found is if you jump twice at the last second, so just jump, double jump, it always works somehow. Again, not really sure how they expected you to know that, and definitely for kids this would be tough, but on the SNES version you don't have a ton of time to react. It doesn't matter in this section because there are arrows to tell you what you need to do. But then we get to what might be my absolute least favorite section of the game, or at least the early game, and this is where you really have to learn the game's mechanics. So this is the hippo section. Now, I didn't play the SNES version growing up, and on the Genesis version, it's really easy. You jump, grab this hippo's ear, you can then get a free continue by jumping to this hippo, and you could just get to the next section, or you could go down to this little island, get another one up. And wait, it gets even better, because then all you need to do is jump from this bird's nest to this hippo. It doesn't look like it's gonna reach, but it does, and you've made it past this section. Pretty easy. Why is this even a section? Well, let's look at what it looks like on the Super Nintendo version. Now, on this version, try as you might, you're not making that jump to the first hippo. And I'm very convinced that jump was completely unintended, and a result of a slight physics change on the Genesis version. What the game clearly wants you to do is grab onto the hippopotamus's tail and swing on over. Now, this is something that is very hard to convey via YouTube video, but you guys have no idea how awful this swinging is. Or maybe you've played this game and you do know, but you have to hit the tail right on. The first grab isn't so bad. It's going from tail to tail that is annoying. And if you think this is the last time you're gonna have to do this, you're adorable. No, this is gonna be in not that many more levels, but a few. Now to get the continue, you have to swing off this tail, and then just right, you can grab this hippo. Again, you need to hit it just right to grab him. Then you have to swing over to another hippo, and then you can make your way across and end this section. This section is very clearly intended to introduce you to the swinging mechanic, which unfortunately, like I said, will appear again. But now we have everyone's favorite part of the game, Ostrich Part 2. And this time, there are no directional indicators. Truth be told, I used to just memorize what I had to do, because on the SNES version, you barely have enough time to react quick enough if you don't see, especially for the pig. Ducking isn't so bad, but the jump, you actually need to jump a little earlier than you think you do. I never could get past this as a kid, mostly because I didn't know how to do the double jump, but this was as far as I could ever get as a 6-year-old. There's still one more section remaining, but it's pretty easy on both versions. All you have to do is roar the pink monkeys again in the correct order. There's even a free 1-up, although this one doesn't respawn. Some 1-ups in the game are coded to respawn, some don't. Jumping across these logs just requires the most basic timing, and then you just have to figure out which monkeys to roar when, and you've made it to stage 3. Stage 3, be prepared. This stage is pretty much the exact same on both Genesis and SNES, and is fairly easy with one major caveat. It starts out by pitting you against 2 hyenas, so from stage 1 boss to just an enemy that's going to appear throughout this level. Early video games really like to do that, and I always find it kind of funny when bosses just become generic enemies. But now we get to the real boss of Lion King, the swinging mechanic. When Simba swings forward, you jump, and then you have to kind of rock the D-pad to hit the next one. It's really difficult when you're not used to it, but I will say, you do kind of get used to it. Now, if you really want to struggle, there's an optional section right here where you can get a 1-up. Never actually done that. Also, on the Super Nintendo version only, you can, instead of rolling through these bones, you can just jump through them. I don't really know what difference that makes, but now you know. The next section requires quick jumps from left to right. All you need to do is press A or mash it, because that lets you go a little faster, and just hold left, hold right. The timing is a little funny, not quite Mario 64 wall jumping over here. And you don't need to go fast for this one, but the next time you will need to go kind of fast, because after getting the checkpoint, you have rushing water that is going to burn you. I don't really know how the water hurts you, but it does. And that's pretty much all the difficult stuff in the stage. Now all you have to do is avoid getting damaged too much by these birds. They take 2 hits, although some take 3. I have no clue why some are 2 and some are 3. The truth is, the birds don't chase you that far. You can just avoid them. And then there is a continue right here hidden, and then you can jump onto this hammock thing and make your way to the final boss of this stage, 3 hyenas. Only 2 appear at a time, and the strategy with the hyenas is they attack twice, either jumping or gnashing their teeth. Then they become tired, you jump on them. You kind of want it to sync up, it makes it easier. And then one last hyena, the pile of bones disintegrates, and you've made it to what for a lot of you would be the final stage you would ever play of this game, the Stampede. This is probably the most infamous stage in all of the Lion King, and it is infamous for good reason. Fortunately, it is quite cheesable. You literally can just oftentimes stick to the very left or very right, and nothing can hit you. But Sometimes you'll actually have to come into the center. The biggest issue with this stage is the timing and perspective. When the rocks appear, which you're gonna have to jump over, when the wildebeests appear, it's not quite so obvious. But I will say that if you have enough lives and continues, you do kind of get used to it eventually. Now, on the SNES version, when you get hit by the wildebeest, you lose half your health, which means 2 hits, you're done. The Genesis version only takes off a chunk of your health, which is what the SNES version does for the rocks. So once again, Genesis version is easier, which is why it was the first version I made significant progress in. And if you feel like, where's the butt, Jaros? It's coming. Oh, it's coming. But in a while now. Now we got one of my least favorite stages in the entire game, Simba's Exile. Simba's Exile, there are these randomly falling rocks that can hit you. And there's also these larger rocks that are one-hit KOs. There's also a bunch of porcupines, and eventually there's swinging things. This level is garbage. The footage you've been seeing is from my Twitch streams in the last few days, playing these games again, but this wasn't the first time I ever beat Lion King. When I was 17, I finally managed to beat the SNES version, and I'm watching that footage back, and I had no idea you could do that. Oh my god, that's so easy. Also, jumping on this ledge is really horrible. But I'm going to show you my new experience, which is that you have 2 sections with this insta-kill rock. If any of the little rocks hit you, you're done. You've got to roll through a porcupine. Then you fall onto these swinging platforms, which if you screw up, because you're going to screw up because it's really hard to do that. Also, if you can swing backwards on them, I don't know if you know that, but now you do. Then you can make it to the second big rock section. And yeah, if you get hit by a little rock, you have to jump on this ledge, and it's very finicky. Now you're in a section with a bunch of really big jumps. On both Genesis and SNES, you can make these jumps pretty easily. However, you're going to need momentum, and Simba's control, as I mentioned, slightly sluggish, so you got to factor that in. But now you've made it to the ultimate swinging section. There's a couple standable ledges. Then you grab a swingy one onto a standable, 2 swingies, and that takes you to the checkpoint. And we're almost done the level. They put the checkpoint at like the 80% mark. So now there's a bunch of porcupines, you can roll through them, and then you get to the final swingy section. This is like your final exam of the swingy stuff, and is one of the last times you actually have to do this. But it is one of the most difficult times. You have to vary swinging and standing, swing to different distances. It's difficult. As you can see, I'm nailing it, but that's because I've done this like 20 times. My first few times playing this game, this was absolute torture. Oh, absolute torture. Speaking of which, Hakuna Matata. This level is the worst level in the game until you know what to do, and then it's really easy, but knowing what to do is... okay. So, the level starts off with various pick-a paths. All of them will take you to the same place, but what you're gonna want to do is proceed all the way right, then fall to the right. It'll take you down some waterfalls, and this will take you almost to the end of section 1. You gotta make a few jumps. These frogs are kind of hard to see, and they spit water at you? I don't really know, but then you just have to jump here where there are jumping spiders. Question here, why do the frogs spit stuff at you, which you might think a spider would do, at least in video games, and then the frogs don't jump? Like, anyway, then you get to more swinging stuff, but this one isn't so bad because falling doesn't really result in anything. You can see at this point I've gotten super good at the swinging, and there's some health here that I can grab, as well as the checkpoint. Now, let's talk about the next section. What you're gonna need to do is proceed all the way to the right. Please do this or it becomes impossible because it lets you skip half of the waterfall. And this, my friends, enemies, people who don't like me, know me, everyone in the goddamn multiverse, this level sucks so hard. Now, I'm gonna show you my first attempt at this, and it's embarrassing. The logs are all falling, and you need to get all the way to the top. But like, what path do you take? How do you avoid losing ground? I was at this, I'm just speeding it up. I was at this for such a long time. and I would just fall. You can't grab the logs. If you could, this would be a lot more manageable, but you can't. And so I was at this for, I think, at least 15 minutes to half an hour, and I couldn't figure it out. I was so upset. But then I remembered something I just said a few minutes ago, that back in 2011, I did beat this game, and I still have footage from that period. Because yes, in 2011, I wanted to be a YouTuber and make a video on the Lion King game. I am living my dream 13 years later. Excuse the VHS quality footage here, but here is what I saw. And you might ask why I didn't just look up a YouTube video on it. That's because I know the way my mind works, and by watching myself play the game, it all came rushing back. The easy strategy to beating this. If you're not seeing it, don't worry, I'll explain it to you. These two logs in the center, you can jump from one to the other, and you can jump straight up. That is how you can make significant vertical progress despite the fact the logs are falling. Now, sometimes you don't have a good log to jump to, and that's okay, it just kind of stalls your progress. But by jumping up, and then either to the left or right, depending on what logs appear, I believe they are RNG, but these two logs always appear one after another. And you know what, having said that, it leads me to believe this is all cycle-based, and not actually RNG, it's just there's so many cycles going on at the same time. You'll also notice in this playthrough, I have way more roar in health. These persist after you game over, which is kind of cool. And so I would abuse that to just get as many as I could in the first level, and did like this crazy long setup for like 15 minutes, which is why the start of this recording that I've backed up on my computer from 13 years ago starts with the game over screen. It's kind of funny, but you'll notice that in my modern playthrough on the Genesis, I have almost no health. That does actually make things a lot more tricky, but I'm proud of myself. I've gotten way better at this game. Anywho, if you thought that was bad, then you have to battle the boss. Well, there's another checkpoint. So the boss is completely unintuitive. Do you jump on him? No, if you try to do that, he whacks you with his hand. So what do? Do you jump on the coconuts? The answer is, well, you can. But the easiest thing to do is this. He throws coconuts and there's a set pattern, but when he throws them, you jump over them, then you can jump on him. Then he's gonna move in a preset way, and you need to know where you can be in order to avoid him damaging you. The first thing he does is move to a higher platform, then you just have to chase him before he starts throwing coconuts again. Then you can move all the way to the right, but don't get too close, he'll whack you. Then you want to jump on him and go to the right, chase him, try not to get hit by any coconuts, jump over them. Then you just hide under this platform. He's gonna go all the way to his final section at the very top. I have never not been hit by a coconut chasing him here. This is actually the toughest section because what you're gonna need to do in this time is actually move under him as he jumps around. And it's harder to avoid the coconuts because you have almost no room to maneuver. This is even more challenging on the SNES version when you can barely see the boss. But after you jump on him the final time, the game goes into a cutscene and you have passed the child section of the Lion King. This is the hardest part of the game, sort of. Actually, the adult section is hard too, but it's hard for very different reasons. This first stage, however, is so darn easy. It's insulting. After the gauntlet, which is Exile and Hakuna Matata, Simba's destiny is ridiculous. Simba now gets the ability to slap things, and he is really good at slapping things. I don't know if you're completely invulnerable while slapping, but you're kind of invulnerable. It's weird. I've never really understood how damage works in this game. These monkeys, by the way, you can roar them or slap them, but this level is unbelievably easy. There are pits, but they're not insta-kill pits. They just have thorns, and there's really not much to say about this level. There's some hidden power-ups within it, and there are some rocks you have to cut free. If you get hit by the rocks, it is an insta-death like it is in Simba's Exile, but really, I just don't have much to say about this stage. It's just insulting. There's also these weird beat-em-up sections where one leopard, cougar will spawn at a time, and you just have to slap them silly until they stop spawning or Rafiki appears. That's it. There's nothing really more to the stage. It's so easy and lulls you into a bit of a false sense of security for the next stage, which absolutely decimated me my first time back at this game, the volcano stage. Up to this point, everything we've seen has some connection to the movie. Simba in the Pride Lands, Simba singing I Just Can't Wait to Be King, Simba returning to Pride Rock. When does Simba go to a volcano? I'm sorry, I know Pride Lands are like on fire, but this is literally a volcano. Anyway, oh my god, this level sucks. Okay, this level really, really sucks. It's really difficult. The level brings back the cougars, jaguars, whatever they are, but introduces the new enemies of lava vents and dripping lava. These are probably the most dangerous enemies in the game. Now, with enough health, like I had in my playthrough from years ago, you can kind of just damage boost through the entire level. Fun fact, I would learn later that you can also do this even with way less health if you're really good at the game, which I became. But here are some attempts, and I'll speed this up, of me not being good at the game and just dying over and over and over and over and over and over again. It was really tough, and I hate it. And there's a lot of waiting around, and it's very slow. This is also the first stage that reintroduces hyenas, and you can just slap them too. There's something else you can do, but I didn't know that yet. We'll talk about that in just a second. Next, we get to this section where there's some lava vents and some stalagmites in the background. I couldn't figure out what to do here, but eventually I realized you could whack these. Now, when it falls, get out of the way, or, of course, insta-death. Why not? And right before a checkpoint. What jerks. Now we get ready for the lava ride. So, with a lot of health, you can just damage soak all these bats. But I don't have a lot of health. I didn't want to cheese the game the way I did 13 years ago. Unfortunately, you can't roar the bats, and there is knockback in this game. It's not too bad if you stand all the way to the left, but the bats easily can knock you into the lava. I lost all my continues here my first time back at the game, and just stopped playing for the evening. I had made it all the way to what I didn't realize at the time was the third last stage of this game, and yet I had to redo everything all over again. It's part of why I became so good at the game. Not having infinite continues is just such an absolute jerk move, and is another big reason people couldn't beat this game. You just simply don't get enough retries. Heck, even losing your checkpoint when you game over is kind of a jerk move, but losing all your progress when you run out of continues is just so mean and unnecessary. But anyway, let me show you how to get through this bat section now that I'm good at the game. It requires some careful platforming, but you can jump, make some small jumps, and whack them. Your whack has a lot of range, and you can hit the bats before they can do anything to you. I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying this is the thing I am most proud of that I got good at. This section was such a nightmare, and just to be able to consistently get by these bats like they're nothing, it felt so good. The next section, you have to race against the platform. There are two enemies in your path, slap them silly, and then you get a refillable one-up. This is uncharacteristically kind of the Lion King, so essentially you have infinite retries if you get to that point. Another 1-KO rock you have to avoid. Jumping as you go off the ledge is an easy way to make sure you don't ledge grab, which you can do, and then you die. And then you have this extremely deceptively mean jump where you kind of have to do like a bracket sort of jump, I call it. Then you have to whack this bat at the perfect time, and you're almost done the stage. If you can figure out, well, you gotta get past these cheetahs. Then you get a checkpoint, and then you get the boss of this stage. Now, I could not for the life of me figure out what I was supposed to do here. Was I supposed to whack the vents? Was I supposed to, like, what is going on? Well, let me tell you, it's just a survival section. And I actually figured out the easiest way to survive. by staying on this right vent, the rocks are in pretty good patterns, and eventually what's going to happen, I'm just going to speed it up here, you have to get really good at small jumps, and you have to make sure your head isn't facing the rocks, because your hitbox is on your head. Eventually what's going to happen is stalagmites are going to fall from the ceiling onto these vents, and they're going to stop spewing lava. But then I couldn't figure out what I had to do, and I actually had to look it up in my 13-year-old video, because I remembered you jumped on one of the clogged lava vents and it launches you to the next level, but it didn't work for me until I figured out that it has to be the very left vent. And now, remember I said the worst stage in the game? I lied. This is it. This stage is abominable. It's a maze. A frickin' maze. Are you kidding me? But it's not any kind of maze. No. It's a maze where you can only enter the door once you've defeated every enemy. I got so stuck on this stage for multiple reasons. One, it's a maze with multiple doors, and while some lead you to power-ups, there's only one direction you can go that's the right way. There is a solution here, and I'll tell you what the solution is. But the hyenas, when it's just one of them, slap them, easy. But when they gang up on you, what are you supposed to do? Well, let me show you. This is one of my more recent playthroughs on the SNES version, and you can do this on Genesis too. You see, you jump on an enemy's head and mash the slash button, it insta-kills them. There's nowhere in the game that tells you can do this, and as far as I can tell, the manual doesn't tell you this either. I found this up by looking up a YouTube walkthrough for something we'll talk about in a minute or two, but oh my god, does this make this section so much easier. There's also a weird difference here, where one of the sections has one less hyena in the Super Nintendo version. I have no idea why they did that, but alright, let me tell you the solution here, because I could go on and on how much I despise maze levels, or a maze level being the second last stage, but also important to note, no checkpoints in this stage. You always start from the beginning. So okay, first things first, you encounter a bunch of different caves. You need to go into the cave on the furthest right. Alright, next, there is no choice of caves. You just have to go around and down into this cave. Again, we have a section where there's no choice of cave. However, this is the section where in the Genesis version, there is an extra hyena here on the right that isn't in the Super Nintendo version. And remember, you have to defeat every hyena or you can't get into the cave. Now you get to a section where you have to descend on the hyenas, and this is actually where you can learn about the pounce by doing it accidentally, but I didn't really know what I was doing until I referenced a walkthrough from like 2001 on Game FAQs. Man, this is getting super historical. Okay, now you get to a section with some health, which is scarce, and 3 hyenas. Trying to defeat them by slapping them, and you can also throw them by pressing a different button. This is really difficult, and unfortunately, what I did for a lot of my attempts is go down a path that looks like it's the right way, this one second from the left, but it is incorrect. You need to go to the one second from the right, or the one immediately below you when you enter the stage. Next, you get to a room with 2 hyenas. Thankfully, there's no choice of different door. You just slap both hyenas silly or pounce on them. And then you make it to another section where there is a choice of doors. If you go in the right door, you are taken all the way back to the beginning of the stage. What absolute monsters! Thankfully, in my first playthrough on Genesis, I chose left, and that actually is the final section. All you have to do here is defeat the hyenas, and the stage automatically ends. And now we battle Scar. Scar is how I found out about the pounce mechanic, because as you're gonna see, I simply could not figure out a way to defeat Scar. I tried throwing him, I tried slashing him, and Scar would just counterattack me and drain all my health in a matter of seconds. Now, even without knowing about pouncing, you can defeat Scar and move on. I will show you what it looks like when pouncing works. But then you get a swinging section. Oh boy, did you miss those? It's been a few levels, but yeah, you still gotta know how to do that. It's not just a boss fight here, there's platforming involved. Annoying platforming. Really annoying platforming. And this is a good time to show you how easy Scar is. Just jump on his head, pounce, and you're done. Okay, now you move on to some platforming. There's a hyena in your way, you can just slap it away. But then, lightning starts to appear. Thankfully, if a hyena goes on the same space as the lightning, it gets rid of it, but otherwise the lightning, the fire, it just stays. More swinging involved, but at least there's some health. And then you can make your way up to almost the second Scar battle. There's 3 of them. More hyenas get in your way. More fire gets in your way. That's unpassable. Then you do some more swinging, and you get up to almost the top of Pride Rock. Now, the second battle with Scar is a little more difficult, doubly as difficult as I found out, because Scar has double the HP. This is when I started having to look up the pounce mechanic, because I was running out of lives, I was running out of continues, and I wanted to beat the Genesis version. I could not beat it as a kid for a reason we're going to talk about in just a second. But now you'll notice I have looked up the pounce mechanic, and that's all I'm doing. You have to jump on Scar's head. I'm starting to learn the timing a little bit, and then Scar pushes you off. If you want to be super safe, you can actually jump away further to avoid him counterattacking you. And be careful, because Scar will try to push you off into the fire, which that is the look of someone who did not know that was a thing. But the truth is, once I got a little better at pouncing, I was able to beat Scar 2 fairly quickly. There is some health up here, but no checkpoint. And now there are hyenas, but more annoyingly as we speed through, lots and lots of fire. It's not RNG. If you go fast enough, you'll avoid it, but if not, you take mandatory damage. Thankfully, if you do get the fire off screen, everything is fine and dandy, but there is no more health. Once you get up top, you get to the final Scar battle, and this battle is why I couldn't beat it on Genesis. Because once you drain Scar's health, and at this point I didn't know about the HP system, you have to throw Scar, and you can see I'm trying to do that. On SNES, it's just one of the face buttons, but on Genesis, one button is jump, one button is slash, one button is roar, and one button is pause. And the Genesis only has 4 buttons. So here is why I couldn't beat it. In order to throw, you have to press both A and B at the same time, and because I didn't understand the health system, I just lost to Scar again and again and again. If you have a 6-button controller, then the top buttons are all the throw button. This isn't even said in the menu, it just works like that. And watch what happens when you pounce on Scar. I believe you have to pounce on him 4 times in the final boss. If you do it properly, each one does 50 damage, and it's at this point you could throw Scar safely. Even if you're playing with a 3-button Genesis controller and you've trouble getting the throws down, it won't matter, because once Scar's health is drained, he stops attacking. He just pants the whole time. And had I known that, I would have been able to beat this 13 years ago. Instead, I had to do it on Super Nintendo, and while that was fun, this was the version I liked better. And after throwing Scar, you can see genuine joy. 13 years in the making. I can't say 30 years in the making because I have beaten Lion King before, but never on Genesis. It was always something I wanted to do, and finally was able to do so. So, let's wrap up this game. Is it a good game? In my opinion, yes. It's not the best game. I'd say it's about a 7 out of 10, and it's definitely frustrating and difficult. But I don't think it's difficult in ways that make it bad. I've talked about the ways that make it difficult bad, and that's why it's a 7. The lives and continue systems are ridiculous. But guys, I am not a Kaizo Mario player. I am not a super good platforming gamer. And even 13 years ago, I was able to beat this game. You would be too. And it's fun to play. Sure, the control isn't as fluid as something like a Mario World, but it is kind of fun to get Simba to go fast, and if you know what you're doing, you can really zoom through levels. I do find it rewarding to get good at this game, And that's the mark of a good game, even if it's not a great one. If you're looking for a 16-bit platformer with a bit of challenge, or maybe a lot of challenge, I do think I would recommend this game. And people on stream know I can be really harsh and unrelentingly critical, even of games I played as a kid. I genuinely do find the platforming fun in this, even the swinging, actually maybe not the swinging. And while it is obtuse, and using a walkthrough like this one may be necessary, when you finally beat it, it's super rewarding. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is my passion project channel, so the fact you guys are supporting me here means everything to me. Thank you so much once again, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.